right, and we are live. I am Bryce Roberts, VP of Marketing of Xperience /Skykick / Data Protection Unit of ConnectWise. And I'm coming to you from sunny and a little bit chilly Denver office, not the normal MSP Xperience lounge background with the neon light. I tried to hang it on the window here. They wouldn't let me. So we're missing the Neon X light for this series at the lounge, but that's okay because we're more than making up for it with the energy and the exciting conversation we're going to have today with Bob Miller, COO of Global Data Systems out of Lafayette, Louisiana. So Bob, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit to the MSP Xperience Lounge live stream public here?
Sure, Bryce, and thanks to everyone for having me today. My name is Bob Miller. I am the Chief Operating Officer for an MSSP named Global Data Systems in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I am also the founder of a community project called IRGame, which we're going to be talking about today.
Perfect. Yes, and we'll get through all the topics and everything. So we were just catching up beforehand. We were both at IT Nation Connect recently in sunny Orlando, and did not see you because it was a sea of people and tried to find you and probably vice versa. And you had a session about incident response. And so maybe we'll start there. If you could recap a little bit, maybe just even the vibe of Connect, who you were able to see, who were you able to find out there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did connect with a whole bunch of people. And like you said, there were so many people at that conference. And I had a huge list of the people that I wanted to meet up with because they were all going to be there. And I think I maybe got 2/3 of them, but there were a third of them that I missed completely. And like you said, there was so much going on that entire week. The sessions were really compelling, so you wanted to take part in that. I had a session myself, which was, Tony Hawk opened up for me that morning, which I thought was kind of him. He was really nice to do that. Yeah. Yep. And then after because that was a keynote at IT Nation on the Friday was Tony Hawk, which was a really great keynote, which may not seem that way when you're sitting in a room as MSPs, MSSPs, or enterprise people. You may not think Tony Hawk it seemed weird until you sit through it. And then it was really amazing how his path and journey through skateboarding was so similar to like my path and journey through technology kind of work, right? And it resonated with me in a lot of different ways. So Tony opened up that morning. Then about 10:30 I had a session on advanced incident response training using online multiplayer gaming, which we're going to be talking a lot more about today, which was a great session. I enjoyed it. Friday sessions are always a little tricky because people are starting to bug out, right? So, but I was before noon, so I had about 30 people in there, which a lot of great questions, a lot of great comments. And in fact, I've had several contact me after the conference and, wanted to get more involved, either have us do a game for their company or something. So there was a lot of really good crosstalk at those, at that function. So, and man, there were so many vendors. Like I didn't even see you, Bryce. And I mean,
Right.
I walked around that vendor hall probably 50 times and still somehow missed seeing you. So that was, it's because the scale was so big.
Oh, I know. Yeah. We were strategically located at the very back this year. And we still had tons of people coming by, and we gave out Xperience socks, and we had great conversations. But yeah, you would have to run the gauntlet and get through all the solution providers that you know really well, and they want to talk to you, and you want to talk to them, and it takes dedication to get all the way to the back left.
You got to have focus.
That's right. You got to want it. Well, great. So speaking of questions that you got after your session, we would love for the folks on the live stream to chime in with questions. Where I got some kind of pre-comments, people excited to learn more. So this is always an interactive experience with the MSP Xperience Lounge. Love for you to ask Bob questions about his journey through tech, MSP, MSSP, being a COO. We'll get into the game very, very quickly and soon, but, being a founder, having a community project and really, bootstrapping that and providing that to the community, but also figuring out a way to deliver that at scale and to add value. And the sky's the limit on any questions. I saw the Tabasco factory is in Lafayette.
Well, it's not Lafayette, but it's close enough.
It's close? Okay.
It's only about 25-30 minutes away from.
Nice.
It's in New Iberia, but yeah, the Tabasco factory is kind of it's really a global mainstay, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
So and one of the cooler places to visit if you're a hot sauce fan, for sure.
I am a hot sauce fan. Yeah, that would be a mecca of sorts to me. So
you could
awesome.
You could Yeah, they've got a chapel and everything. You kneel. They'll give you some Tabasco flavored ice cream, and you can try that out and
Oh, that's
realize that
awesome.
even that's good. So yeah, there's lots
That's
of cool
great.
things. So
I'll have to add that to my 2025 bingo card. Attending a wedding, people eloping or getting married at the Tabasco Chapel
yeah,
outside Lafayette next year. Let's see if I can make that happen. Amazing. All right. Well, so please send your questions in, and without further ado, let's get into it. What's the background of IRGame? When did you have the idea? It's a community project. Just kind of give us
right.
the broad strokes first, please, Bob.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everybody in our business has heard the term tabletop exercises and incident response, right? So we don't have to really go down that well. But the thing that's always been interesting is how difficult it's been to get either MSPs or MSSPs or their customers to actually engage in the process, right? So that's always been kind of a tricky thing. So a couple years ago, there was a pre-day session at Ride a Boom that Huntress was sponsoring, and they were going to be running a MSP oriented physical tabletop exercise. So I attended that, and because I actually knew Ethan Tancredi, who was actually doing the facilitation for it, and I basically bum rushed my way in. I wasn't signed up for it. I just kind of sneaked in there, and I went and asked if it was okay if I stuck around, and they said, well, somebody's probably not going to show up, so why don't you just sit in the chair, and as long as everybody throws you out, then you can take the ride. So I did. So I went through that exercise, which was a really great exercise written by Matt Lee of Pax8 and Ethan Tancredi of Huntress that kind of worked together to generate this physical tabletop that was really oriented toward MSPs, right? And so the basis of the scenario was a third-party compromise of a piece of software that MSPs or MSSPs use, on a daily basis, common to all of us. But in going through the exercise, it was really terrifying and or enjoyable at the same time, because it really was it helped convey the stress and disorientation of having to deal with an incident, right? Especially if you're an MSP and had not been through one. I remember the first one I went through here when I was at Global Data Systems was the SolarWinds, incident, right? And so we were a SolarWinds customer. So we had to go through the process, and I remember, and having helped another half dozen customers go through things like ransomware and other things, sitting in that exercise, I realized how good it was at conveying the environment of actually being in an incident, even though it was just a physical tabletop. So they were really kind and said so in the session, said, hey, if you want to take this exercise and go run it with your company, you could do that. We'll give you the material, right? And so I asked for the material. I brought it home. I talked to Ethan and Matt and told them that I was going to do it. And I think we are the first organization to take their physical tabletop and actually run it as an organization. Because they offer it all the time, but not, they haven't had any real takers. So, but I customized it and I changed it up because I guess I should say I've been an electronic gamer since I was a kid. So online games and multiplayer games and digital games, our board games, Dungeons and Dragons, all of those things as growing up as a kid, I've always been a part of. So in looking at the tabletop exercise, I customized it for our organization by replacing some of the generic company names they had in there. I replaced them with our customer names. And the revenue, the MRR, NRR, I replaced it with our MRR and NRR, right? Because I wanted to make it much more personal to my organization. Yeah. And then we ran that exercise. So we had an operations offsite and ran the exercise. I included about 85 of the 135 people in the organization in it. So I had finance in it, marketing in it, and not just the tech side. And we ran the exercise, and it was like a really huge success. I mean, and what was interesting is even though we're a mature MSP, we've been around about 30 years, cut over from VAR to MSP about 15, 16 years ago.
Okay.
So we had an incident response plan. It was a well rehearsed, up to date incident response plan. So we always felt like we were ahead of the game on all the way. But what was interesting, and in playing this physical tabletop, we wound up having to make about a dozen changes to our incident response plan. Because if somebody would have come and bet us that took a bet and said, hey, we don't think you got a really good incident response, we'd have taken that bet easy. Sure. Because we were confident in it. We had seen it. We go through it twice a year, make sure it was up to date. But after going through an exercise that was completely tangential to what we would have thought we would be doing, we just discovered things that were missing and needed to be changed in our own. So even a mature organization that understood incident response, had a plan, looked at the plan twice a year, walked through it twice a year. We did this one game and we had to go back and modify about a dozen things, which
Amazing.
That I think that resonated with me more than anything. It's like, okay, well, there's practice and then there's practice, right? There's a practice where you just go through it and you walking it through it, but then there's real practice when you're put in a situation where there are unknowns and injects and randomness involved in it. And so I've been at about 8 startups in my career. So one of the guys that's our software architect, who's the other co-founder on this, technical co-founder, he said, we got this little game framework we worked up 7 years ago. I bet I could put this thing online this weekend in a couple of days. I said, well, if you want to give it a shot, do it. Let's see what happens, right? And so, sure enough, we played it on a Thursday. On Sunday, he called me and says, hey, get online and check this out. And so I got online, and sure enough, that manual tabletop was now functioning online and was a multiplayer version of it. So I got on Tuesday of the following week. So it hadn't even been a week since we ran the exercise. Yeah. I got Matt and Ethan online. I said, hey, take a look at this. And, they lost their minds. They've been wanting to do something, they wanted to contribute to the community more. And so this was their way. They said, oh my God, this actually works, right? Because they had mentioned it before when I said, hey, I want to borrow the plan. Matt said, yeah, one of these days, I always make this thing electronic. And Ethan says, well, Bob and them are programmers, so they might be able to help with that. And I said, yeah, well, think about it. Turns out we came back to them less than a week later and it was running. Right. So within a week, we set up a first run with actual MSPs and enterprise people, about a half a dozen or so. And we ran the exercise online, and I wasn't really ready. I wasn't ready for the response. These people, they went crazy and were so excited about the fact that this was teaching them things they did not realize, right? And we can talk more about the detail later, but it's more of a hearts and minds exercise. You don't have to be technical to use it. Right. So your experience when you go through it, you can experience it with a CEO level person or a finance person or an accounting or marketing or whatever, and you're going to get something out of it as you play through it. And I didn't want to get too excited about the fact that they were going crazy because I thought, well, maybe they're nerds and they just like this kind of stuff. Let's try it again. So the next month, at the end of the month, we did another run with about 25 people, and same effect. I mean, they were going like, hey. Then they started saying things like, hey, when can we use this to run with our customers? Right. You know what I mean? And, Bryce, you know this, being the software, being Axient, the problem has always been getting the decision makers in an organization to realize what's required for them to be able to address the problems that they have no experience in. They don't have any emotional attachment to it, right? They have no way of understanding what it's really like to be in that. And you can explain to them technically all you want, but if they're not technical, they're not going to get it, right? So there's always been that gap, right? And the math that they always do, the math that the decisions maker do is that 1 + 1 is too damn much, right? So if you come in with something that costs an extra $1, that's going to be too much. And that's because, again, they don't have an emotional connection with it. So that was really the start of IRGame. And I mean, it was ugly. I always tell people this, if somebody's willing to buy something you made, even when it's ugly, then you're on the right track. You know what I mean? And and that's kind of how we started, down this flow.
Right. Lo-fi works great when you're creating that emotional response. To your point, that's what drives decisions, not just the speeds and feeds or the specs. So let me pause real quick and just thank folks who are chiming in the comments. Eddie, I'm not sure if this is a reference to the exact Tyson-Paul fight the other day, but
same thing though.
The famous Tyson quote: "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face." And so the IR plans, everything that you built up as an institution, which I'm sure has been iterated and improved upon over time. But it's this creativity, and we'll get into more the specifics and how you're leveraging AI to really get deeper content and really the richness of the content. But it's probably this idea of the other facets or the other perspectives that are outside the organization in the incident simulation that are because the people who create the plans are the people who imagine how something would go down. And so you kind of need that external actor, I bet,
That's
to a
right.
degree to get to that level of creativity. So thanks so much for the comments. Please keep them coming, and the questions. So initial, raving response, then the next
Yeah.
team, then the next team. So now, great. Now your pet project, everyone wants to scale it and
Yeah.
use it. And so what's next?
Yeah, well, I mean, as soon as we did the second one and the response was the same, people who were playing the game kept saying, "Hey, we really love this. If there's something we could do to help you with it, just let us know." Right. And so that was happening as we kind of moved along. What I decided to do then is that we were going to put on a free game the last Friday of every month and, open that up for people to sign up for and take part in. And so some of the people that were I'd worked with, I'd either met through another community, which Empath, if you guys, Empath is a company that does training, but they had a community site. So I'd met a few people there, Stephen being one of them, by the way, which is what I was talking about, knowing him well. And Eddie played the game. So you've got people in the chat who had played this game, so they understand what we're talking about. Oh, yeah. But it's interesting that's how I met a lot of them, was them playing the game and being so excited about it that they were willing to offer time to kind of keep building it. So, the next decision we made was, okay, well, we need to, this is actually going really well. This is about the third or fourth month in a row. By April or so, right. We were selling out. We would put 50 seats up for registration and sell them out, like real quickly. And we were still running that one scenario. So we didn't have a whole bunch of different scenarios yet or anything, but there was enough people who hadn't seen it that, and now we could connect with people who weren't in one place, right? I mean, your team could be all over the US, but still take part in an exercise together, and so that started to show the value proposition of what it is that we were doing, even to a larger extent. And we were gathering feedback from the players constantly about what they thought worked, what they thought didn't work, what they'd like to see in iterations going forward. So we were gathering field intelligence, customer discovery as we went, right. Which was it's always fun to do that when you're actually using something and you can see how they react to it naturally, right? So, it was a very advanced minimum viable product to put in front of people, because it actually worked. Still ugly as sin. Don't get me wrong. It was still ugly. It was like a 1980s text-based adventure to some extent, but
Love it. Exactly.
Yeah, but it had enough elements in it, and the storytelling in it, which we'll get into that in a little bit, about how we started combining things like AI and the technical ability of all these volunteers to try to marry all this up. And it's fascinating. My degree's in computer science and math, so I've been writing code since I was a kid. So there's a lot of very cool underpinnings in this that are very computer science oriented. But the end result was, again, we kept getting more and more people interested in trying it and getting in free. And then we like I said, we'll be doing we got November's this week, so we'll be in the one for November. Will be this Friday on the 22nd. Yeah, and you could go to www.irgame.ai and sign up for it if you're interested in that.
Get involved.
And then and then we got one in December as well. So we will have made the full year doing these free incident response games. We have created our latest scenario, which is a business email compromise. And so you can use, now we're doing a business email compromise. So that's part of it too. Now, I know you haven't played the game, Bryce, but the interesting thing about how this game works is we can actually take large groups and break them into breakout rooms, and we can run a different game. It's the same scenario, but it winds up being a different game in each breakout room, because a lot of it is randomly generated when the game starts. So there's things like configurations and that tell you, all right, do you have an IR plan? Are you using an MSP? Do you have an overtime policy for your employees? These are what you would call configuration elements. And then the scenarios that plays out, round after round, injects come in based off of some of those configurations. So it's a very dynamic, and it throws so many different curveballs at you that no two games, even in the same scenario, are alike. They're all different in a lot of ways. So,
high replayability value there, right?
Yeah, and that's to your point, we've had people come back and play 3 or 4 times.
Mhm.
We also have it's a little unique is that we have roles that are a part of this. So when you're in a game, you typically have a role, and that role requires you to do stuff. So you're not just watching something play out in front of you and just commenting. You got to allocate resources depending on your role. So if you're an executive, if a CEO is needed somewhere, you got to allocate executive resources to whatever the challenge is. And the challenges usually have a combination of resource types that are needed and a quantity of them to retire the challenge, which is just like real life, right? If you're trying to figure out a problem, I need 15 minutes of the legal people's time, some marketing time. I got to let the execs know, but I need the technician time is the biggest part of it. So that challenge would require more tech time than others, but they all have to allocate some time to it so that you can retire that challenge and say, okay, that's taken care of. Can we go, can we go forward? So that's how it's kind of built. So when you join up, you're assigned a role, and then you're going to be allocating resources, and there are timers running. You have a finite amount of time to make your decisions. You know what I mean? Right. So it's just, again, we try to mimic as closely as we could real life, right?
Yeah.
So we put you under stress. How do we put you under stress? We limit the amount of information you have, the time you have, and it forces you to make pretty hard decisions in a very short period of time, because that's what it's designed to do, right? You need to practice your critical thinking in these situations and feel under pressure, because that's what those decision makers were always missing, right, Bryce? I mean, is they didn't emotionally connect to what's involved in handling an incident. And when you put them in the hot seat and you make them allocate, and boy, I love catching a CEO, because I'll make them be the tech. I'll make them be the tech resource almost every time, right? Because I just want them to see what it's like where the rubber meets the road. And
walk a mile in their shoes. Yep.
Yeah, if they spend 90 minutes with me playing this game as a tech role, their lives are fundamentally changed forever. And that has been consistent every time we play this. It's been consistent, right? They always leave with multiple pages of notes about what they need to go, start talking about. And I said this when I was at IT Nation. I kept saying, hey, you know what? If vendors, if they had any sense about what it is we were doing here, they'd be pouring gas on us as fast as they could, because this once decision makers understand that, then budgets start opening up for technical solutions. And when budgets open up for technical solutions, then the entire ecosystem is improved, right? And that has always been the challenge. Find some way to reach these people, from an emotional standpoint. Yeah. So that's been a big part of the learning,
That's a huge part of the connection. So Dusty, you got the link in the chat there. Thanks, Isabella. Remind us of the time frame. You just said 90 minutes. What's logistically how do the games kind of go down?
Yeah, I mean, we usually start on the hour or something, or the half hour. But yeah, we've tried games. We've tested, as you might imagine, since we've done a bunch of these. We have tested shorter games, and we had a longer game. It was 2 hours to kind of begin with. And, almost to a person, people say, I don't know, I don't think I can spend 2 hours doing something like that. What I will say, 100% of the time, everybody says, that went so damn fast, man. I mean, that was like a blaze, right?
Because they're sweating bullets the whole time.
Yeah. They're in the story, right? Because there's a story that's being told, and they're a part of it. And as they play it, they're sucked in, they're immersed in it, right? And the next time you look up, 2 hours are gone. So we have settled on always being around the 90-minute time frame, because 60 minutes is pretty easy to check out of, you know what I mean, and not get immersed enough. 90 minutes, and we don't really even tell people how long it's going to last, but we try to keep things around the 90-minute time frame, at least for the smaller scenarios like business email compromise. You can do in 90 minutes pretty comfortably. Although there is an unbelievable amount of complexity in dealing with something like a business email compromise, especially if there's finances involved in it. It can be very intricate, especially in that first week of action. So I think that's the other thing, that even those of us that are building these platforms, when we play them with users, we learn every time too. We learn something new every time, because the diversity of perspective, of the people playing, always give us a different view of it from their perspective. And and so we cumulatively learn every time we do it. So it starts out, and by the way, when that timer starts, there's no stopping it until we're done. So it just runs. And it's broken
Amazing.
up into 2 and 3 minute little sections where we'll present the storyline and the new telemetry about where you're at this point in time. And then there's a section where we actually ask questions. So this is the learning part of it, right? We ask questions relevant to the scenario. So let's say in the case of a business email compromise, if somebody got their credentials compromised, and that's typically how it happens, obviously, the questions are, well, what could we have done different, to make this less likely to happen? And people will chime in and say, well, we could have done user training, or we could have done MFA better, or we could have done, any number of things. So there's a time for questions and answers, and then that's followed up by an allocation round where the challenges are coming in, and people have to start responding to the challenges. So it's a pretty interesting way of doing it. I mean, nobody's done it the way we're doing it. So it allows you to be immersed in the story, then to have a really good conversation about the relevant parts of that you need to be thinking about more about. And then there's the allocation round, which pulls you right back into the story, right? So
Right.
You're learning and you're playing and you're doing all at the same time. And we have professional facilitators who can chime in with their life experience as well, during the process. And there's tons of crosstalk. One of the things I can tell you, one of the things that happens every time is that getting the communication process down between the players always takes about 2 or 3 rounds, because they're faced with challenges. They got to determine a priority. Well, these people haven't ever worked together before this closely, so they have to figure that out. Who's giving guidance on what we should do and how should we attack this problem? By the way, very similar. If you don't have an IR plan, it's extremely similar to what happens in the real world. It's like herding cats.
Which could often not be documented in there because a lot of the soft people stuff isn't there. It's like the blueprint of like, here's the systems and here's the credential, here's the owner. It's very like sterile, very, not maybe up to date, not as organic. So in the same exact line of talk of discussion here, Dusty's question around, so you've got the public ones open to folks on the last Friday of every month. We're getting out of the way of Thanksgiving with this Friday, obviously. So then you've got those, and then you have MSPs, MSSPs asking for them, and then they want to involve end user clients, SMBs, users. Who's invited to what? Who's welcome to what? And how do you run these?
Well, right now we do the free ones; those are consistent. We also do some live events where we include like 3 or 4 heavy hitters, and then a lot of people can watch those games being played in a stream. And then we have had some organizations say, "Hey, would you run some of these on a private session for our company?" Which we're doing a few of those because we need to learn. We need to learn a lot. It's MSPs mostly, right, that are asking for this. And we need to learn how would they go about working and using this with their customers. Because in the end, my goal from the start was to give us a tool set to the MSP community so that they could go to their customers and actually have these sessions and do them with them, right? Because again, establishing that strategic conversation with your potential customers or with your existing customers is the only way that I know to break down that barrier of, hey, this is what we really need to do to make you a lot safer. And the way to do that is to show them how ill prepared they are for the soft things that you were talking about, right? And why is it so critical to have more support systems to do it? So yes, our goal is at some point, and our estimate right now is the first quarter next year, I think we're going to be actually able to turn this loose and let MSPs, MSSPs start using it with their customer base. And so, but that means we'll probably commercialize it at that point. But our goal in that case is if there is a, what we'll try to do, what we'll want to shoot for is that there'll probably just be a price per game for the MSP to use it with their customer, and they can charge. You need to charge your customer, because if you don't charge them something, they don't think it's worth anything most of the time, right? So there's always that as well. So you need to make this a paid engagement, because that's the thing that's going to get their attention and make them focus. That seems to be the only thing that makes them focus is spending money sometimes, right? But but it's a great opportunity for anyone, any MSP to really establish a strategic conversation. And so how do we do that? We're going to build training, and Empath has agreed to let us put a free training path on their system so that people who are interested in being a facilitator for their own organization can go through the training.
That's great.
We'll probably get them to ride along with us on one live game so they can kind of see how it is real time. And then we can turn them loose to start hosting games, using the system to host games on their, with their customers. And our goal on the backside is to continue to add more and more scenarios and more complexity to the scenarios. Have them, right now we've got the BEC is coming from a finance company's kind of a perspective, financial company, but we'll also do some for healthcare, which will have different elements to it. So we're going to be in the level building game, for the next year here to kind of, I think we've got about 18 or 19 different attack vectors that we want to, equate to a technical scenario. Cool. And we can talk more about how we marry that up with the storyline and stuff here in a second.
Maybe it's good. So I love, you've got the attack vectors, you've got the verticalizing to make it even more relevant to multiple end users, and you've got the role aspect in there as well. So just to repeat something that you'd said to frame this again, you talked about the random dynamics that happen. You talked about the decision tree and all the kind of branching that you can do so that no two games are alike, once you follow down all the branches. So then that's a ton of content. Like when you have all these permutations, iterations, that's a lot.
Yeah.
How did the community come up with that? How did you use AI for that? And then even on the back end, how did you structure maybe some of the flow here?
Yeah. Well, so we basically build it starts with the attack vector document. So we call these the actual scenario documents, and they pretty much are laid out. I've done a lot of prompt engineering for AI engines, and like I said, I'm a computer scientist, so I've been using neural nets and learning machines since I was in college. It's nice that I didn't have to build one, and there was one to use nowadays. That's a lot easier and a lot more efficient. So,
let's do that.
But I've been involved in building prompts for AI engines for a long time. So it's been nice to be able to actually spin that on something productive. So I use a lot of prompt engineering as it relates to the story and dialogue, and then marrying it up with the technical scenario document, which is the attack vector. And in that document is basically what are the goals of the exercise at a high level. And then we break it down into different types of attacks. So business email compromise, there are different types of attacks that can be used to accomplish a business email compromise, right? And so we document those technically, in a format that looks a lot like, it can be put into JSON form really easily, or prompt engineering really easily. So we build those technical documents with the different types of attacks, the different types of persistences, the different types of detections that could occur for them. And then we also define things like, okay, what are the roles that would be needed for this type of scenario? And then we work on things like the challenges that would come up as a part of that. And also the injects, which are those, one-time random events. Or you can get more than one in a round, but they are each one independent of one another, and they affect your resources either positively or negatively, depending on what the inject is. You can have a good inject, but you can also have a bad inject, which deprives you of resources. So building up what those are in that technical scenario document is kind of the phase one. It's almost like writing a song. Some people write the melody first, and then they do the words, and some people come up with the words and then put the melody to it. In the case of this, we'll write the technical scenario document, and then I use a layered, prompt engineered to hell and back sort of a set of instructions to these large language models to build up company profiles, build up the people that are part of that company, build up the back history. So these are subsequent runs inside of a large language model to kind of build this background information up. And then I marry that up with the technical scenario document. And I say, create me a story, that takes one of the attacks and one of the persistences and the challenges and injects, and build me a file that consolidates that as a storyline, right? And then that we put in that we're going to put in a JSON format and be able to import it right into the engine. And for the most part, we're working, so you can probably see this coming already. We're working to where all of that's built in. It does it automatically, so it's all automated, so it can generate scenarios real time. At this point, we're generating them in batch mode, but everything that we're building is going to be automatable because of the way we're building the process, right? But that's how you get the variability in things like, well, the stories are variable because the engine's creating the stories uniquely each time, but also the number of injects and challenges that show up in the scenario are also randomly controlled, right? So based on those configurations, like I was telling you. So when you combine about 5 or 6 variables, in the end product, you're going to get no two are going to be alike, right? I mean, they're just, you'll never probably run in the same permutation twice. So,
Right.
So that's kind of how that works. As we build those technical attack vector scenario documents, we can marry those up with company profiles from, and I did what everybody does. I said, okay, ChatGPT, give me the priority of companies who are exposed to business email compromise or who have been victims of business email compromise the most. And it just reeled off, finance, healthcare,
Sure.
right? So once that list is built, then I say, okay, well, build me some company profiles for the first group, finance. How many different types of finance companies are? Gives me a list of all the finance companies. Yeah. Out of that list, randomly pick one and give me a company profile. Give me 10 company profiles for somebody with that particular section of it. So it just kind of layers up, just kind of layer it up and build it up through prompts and things, and then marry that up with that technical scenario document, and you're good to go. You know what I mean? We got what we need to put that in front of people, and then all of a sudden you're playing a new scenario from a whole different perspective with whole different challenges and whole different injects, whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Now you've got the expansion packs on the way. So you got your hype man, Steven, in the comments, hyping it up. It sounds amazing. Just the evolution in such a short amount of time. How this has come together. Are there any is there anything you need from the community? Are there subject matter experts in certain attack vectors that you kind of want some more inputs? Are you looking for people to test it more, for some of these earlier adopters in Q1 to want to do this with their clients? I mean, what you're giving so much to the community, kind of what do you need at this stage?
Well, I mean, we just finished our second frame, we actually, like I said before, the first framework was we ripped off something we had done 7 years ago and made it work. Mm-hmm. So we just now have finished we built a framework, basically a computer science language framework. We built that actual piece of source code that resulted in a framework where we built specifically for what we're doing now. So there's so much flexibility. Like we can have things like challenges. If you don't finish a challenge in a certain amount of time, the number of resources doubles. It makes it harder. We can make it harder. If you don't deal with it soon, it gets worse, which by the way is a lot like in real life, right? So
exactly.
So there's lots of really subtleties in there that we can do now with the new framework. So the input that we're getting now is just people playing the game. That's the best input we can get, is jumping in and playing the game. We also have a Discord channel that we that we give to. Amazing. If you play the game, we'll send you an invite to the Discord channel, and join that, and then you can just dump all the input in the world into that you want, because we're fully listening. We have about a dozen volunteers right now who are working on this, and believe it or not, we meet twice a week and have for the last year. Awesome. And building this and building it up and making it better, and we're going to continue to do that, because my goal is for us to have the best tool out there for testing things like incident response plans. But we're also building, believe it or not, we can use the framework to build emergency response plans. We're doing that for the state of Louisiana for like a tornado incident, because it's the same situation, right? Right. So we're building the system out to be a great training system framework for being able to do these kinds of immersive, gamified, exercises of any kind.
Built a response as a service system, to your point.
That's correct.
That can translate all kinds of stuff. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know this is not the point of it, but as a competitive, gamer myself, the real value is the takeaways, the learnings, the aha moment. Exactly your point of like the emotional response, especially from folks who don't do IR day to day, who aren't in the tech shoes day to day. So that's the real value. How do people win? How do people get points? Like what's that? Can you win?
Yeah. Well, no. Like in real life, when you've got an incident, there's never going to be an incident where you come out and go, man, we really made some money on this, or hey, we generated. It's never going to be like this. So there's, it's just, how do you mitigate as much risk as you can? And the way you do that is as you're playing it, you're tackling these challenges in the most efficient way you can, right? So things that will hamper that or hamper your scores, if you don't deploy all the resources that could have been deployed in a round, that's a problem, right? So you're going to get dinged for that. If you take too long on certain things, because if they're really high priorities and you're taking too many rounds to get to them, then there's reputational damage that you might take, or or revenue damage you might take, because at some point, if you don't handle some challenges right in some of these scenarios, then a customer fires you, right? So that's a loss of revenue. So these are all you're having to balance. And again, I keep saying this, but it's like real life. You have to, when you're faced with all the challenges, you got to figure out how to prioritize them like it's your company. And so you have to think through all the critical thought patterns that you have to, right? And you got to make good decisions, and that minimizes the damage. It's never, you're never going to quote win. You're just going to minimize the damage and quickly get back up and running as fast as you can. Because that's really, from a cybersecurity incident response plan standpoint, that's the best you can hope for, right? Is to minimize the damage and to get up as fast as you can.
Yeah. You can see the layers of the learnings coming out. It's about trends, but to your point earlier, it's about the teamwork and the communication and probably the focus and clarity of what we're actually going to do. I mean, if you don't do the last two, one person could make the best decision and allocate the resources the best way possible. And if no one's going to listen to them, or if they're not going to communicate that out, then it's all for naught. So it all has to kind of come together, right?
Right. Yeah. And I'll tell you, and I've said this at the last game. I'll tell you that this has happened at a high percentage of the time. The women who play this game tend to do better than the men in these stressful situations. Now, I mean, there's probably some real psychology behind that about why that is. Yeah. But they seem to focus. They seem to be able to cut the noise out of the communication channels quicker. They find novel ways to communicate, because sometimes everybody's talking at once and it's very hard to, which again is like real life. When everybody's scared and excited, then it's not always Robert's Rules of Order. You know what I mean? So
it's out the window pretty fast.
About 2 seconds into it, it's like, all hell's breaking loose.
The chair recognizes
right. So it depends a whole lot on somebody taking control and finding novel ways to get it under control. And so far, the women have by far come up with the most novel ways of doing that. I can tell they're used to talking to their husbands or boyfriends, even when they're not listening, and still find a way to get their point across. They always seem to find a unique way to get their point across, and they tend to do much better. But everybody learns. I think even everybody learns that plays the game. Okay, that was a very good idea. I'll do that next time. So, it's the rising tide raises all boats kind of a scenario. Right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to bring some psychologists in at some point and write a paper about the whole experience, just like how would they study, critical decision-making or IR events from a psychology point of view. I mean, that'd be, the learnings from that alone would be pretty substantial. Cool. Steven's going to probably clarify the timing of the date, which Friday it's on. In terms, okay, good.
No, I was just going to say, he's probably right. It's probably local time versus,
I hear you. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So what, if you have it at the ready, what are some tactical takeaways, either from that first experience that you said of like, you went back and adjusted some things. What are maybe some of the top 5 or so things where folks do this and like the next day they're rewriting IR plans in this way or shape or form?
Yeah, well, I can tell you about the ones that were for us for sure, right? So the ones that kind of happened for which should apply to most people. The communication plan, like if you're an MSP or an MSSP, and it turns out your ecosystem is affected by this, not just your customers. If you don't have a physical list of your employees in hand, then if you're dependent on your digital systems to give you that feedback, you're going to be in a bind, right? So that turns out to be something that we had to adjust. So we went and built an out-of-band communication path through Signal, right? And we have that documented in our handbook. Cool. We also, it forced us to basically build what we call our bug out binder, which is a binder these things are physically printed out in our customer list, their contact numbers, all of that is listed in there. And we update that every month. So anytime we onboard new customers or we onboard new employees, every month we refresh the paper contents of our bug out binder, which is in our bug out box, because we're in Louisiana and we have a lot of hurricanes, right? So we already had these bug out boxes we have like a half a dozen laptops that are already formatted, ready to go. We have Starlink in there with them. We have cellular capabilities in there in the box with them. And then we have this binder in there with them. So our teams can take their bug out boxes and go wherever there's power and plug in and get up and running to support something. But it also works in case of an incident, because if we have compromised ecosystem, what you're going to be looking for first is some clean systems to get up and running on in an out-of-band way to communicate. And then being able to contact and tell people what they can say and what they can't say is just as important for your employees, right? You don't want them accidentally saying something. So that communication plan that's a part of that turns out to be hypercritical.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, we had to really think hard about, if we're an MSSP and something happens like this, who are we going to prioritize fixing first? Now, that's something most people don't even touch. And from a conceptual standpoint, they don't understand that you're not going to have enough resources to fix everybody all at once. So that's going to require you to prioritize. Well, how do you do that? Critical infrastructure, revenue, law enforcement. Maybe you got legal clients. You want to fix them first so you don't get sued. What's it going to be, right? And when all hell's breaking loose is not the time to try and figure that out, right?
That's right. That's right. Pre-configure that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to have it you have to have thought about it, and you need to be consistent in exercising it so you don't get yourself in trouble, right? Later and say, well, why'd you fix them instead of me? Because that could come up, right? At some point in this, you need to have a rationale behind it and why you chose that, and you have to be consistent in executing it to minimize the risk for you as a provider, right? So all these little edge cases that really you don't see in a standard tabletop, it forces you to think through those things, right? And some of those were some of the biggest. Our change management policy need to be updated because we again, you need a device inventory and a routing map and a change management process, or you don't even have a good foundation to start building on top of that with an IR plan. But there were things we needed to change to reinforce it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So all of those things wound up being things that we needed to make a change in our own IR plan, and we're experienced and still had to go back and do it. So
that's incredible. Yeah. I wonder if there's an easy way in Discord or through debriefs of the games to get that as a resource and a list for people. I mean, that'd be an incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. What we are going to do, and it's going to come up because we have a big development. We got a big development schedule and things that we're building. But the thing we want to add is we want to have the ability for people to take notes while they play the game in the game, and then when it's over, they'll get a report that has their notes in it along with the key elements we think you should consider as it relates to this type of scenario. So we want to be able to give them basically a game report that has information, statistics, that sort of deal, plus their notes, and things that they should be thinking about. So we want that to be a takeaway when you play the game that's automatically generated. So that's on the list of things for us to do.
Like that. So if you can input notes while you're playing the game, I would just have a small feature request, kind of like roller coasters at theme parks when they take a photo of you when you're going down the drop. If you could just take a photo of people's faces when the attack vector drops or when the token hits, and it's just like, and just have them be able to purchase that and frame it, for the future. I think that'd be. It's just an idea, I'm an idea.
No, that's cool, man. That's I'm making a note now, Bryce. Right.
Okay, good. As long as it's on your radar, that's
it's on the radar. Absolutely.
So we normally don't ever do any kind of pitches in the lounge, but just because it's on topic, the runbooks aspect of X360 Recover, where you can pre-configure your disaster recovery settings, with port forwarding and networking, all that kind of stuff. It just seems like a natural fit. So if that ever comes up, people are like, I have the IR plan, but what can you pre-configure from? Love the bug out box and the Starlinks and the laptops, and what can we just pre-configure as much as possible and get ready, with the comm plan and everything. That's just one more tool in people's tool belt if you didn't know about it as a feature. Yeah. But awesome. Great. Well, we're coming towards the close. We could talk about this for hours. It's been an incredible conversation. Thanks again, Bob, for joining. Yeah. What should I have asked you about that I didn't? What are you most proud of with this project, or what are some of the things you want to tease that are coming up next that people should get excited about?
Yeah, well, we're look. The thing I'm most proud about is the amount of support we've gotten from the community. Like I said, there are a dozen people who are giving their time right now for this, and it's not even, there's no company, there's not a company related to it yet or anything. We're just we're doing this and we're running these games for the benefit of the ecosystem, and and our particular our particular ecosystem is just pretty amazing in that way, the number of people who are interested in helping others. And so that, I would say the thing that I'm the most proud of is that the people who have offered to assist and be a part of this, even though they're not making a nickel, none of us are making a nickel off of it at this point. We're just doing it because it's the right thing to do, right? And I feel like the problems we're addressing are going to have drastic impact on the whole ecosystem from the standpoint is I think we're finally I know we're going to have a tool to reach those people that we have not been able to reach before. So you're always, as someone who has been involved in creating something new, that's very rewarding to know that, okay, I know we're on the right track. We just have to keep plowing forward. Now, it's not our day job, right? So we work on these things on nights and weekends, to kind of move it. So it's moving slower. It's probably moving slow. It's a little slower than we would like. But I feel like we make progress every month. So, we introduce something new or make something better every month. So that's a great part. I think that's probably the biggest part.
And we had talked previously, I mean, there is the possible outcome in the future to commercialize it in some way, shape, or form, and have more support and have more, resources allocated to it as well.
Yeah. That's the idea. If we can, commercializing it is so that we can expand it and make it a better tool set. And at some point, at some point, it's going to take more time than nights and weekends, and we need, we're going to have to be able to finance that. So obviously, commercializing it makes the most sense. And I get asked about 1 million times, a month. When there are people who want to invest in it, and I said, look, it's like 3 dudes and a dog right now. There's nothing to invest in yet, right? But if we can get a new user interface on it and get it out the first quarter and let some friendly MSPs try it out for us and make sure that we got it tuned really well for them, and it has value. I can tell you this: it's driven 3 different clients to us within a 12-month period of time. Just
incredible. Yeah.
Doing that, and it wasn't on purpose. We don't necessarily invite our prospects by default. It's just when the guys mention it, and if they play the game, it does seem to drive results. So I think that's going to be the case for everybody once we get it out there. So that's I think it helps everybody in the ecosystem if we accomplish the task. So
it is, and I'm a broken record in the MSP Xperience Lounge. I say this every time, and that's kind of the guests that gravitate towards us, and vice versa. It's about the community. This is the most amazing community that's helping each other constantly. We all want to, in our case, the vision for Axion is to cure data loss, right? And so a broader vision to make companies safer, to help them transform their businesses, to make them more secure, safe, profitable, and that's the kind of hero type of helper mentality that so many MSP founders and principals and participants have, is to help people. And we're trying to help each other against the bad guys of threat actors and natural disasters and human error and malfeasances and things like that. So love the effort, love the community support, and love that you called that out as what you're really proud of.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's, again, it was the thought was commercial to begin with, because I wanted to be able to, make that connection, but it's turned out really great. It's turned out great for Global Data Systems because, again, it first of all, it didn't cost our company anything to do. We did it on ourselves just as a volunteer deal, but it's resulted in actual movement. And that's the thing that I am the most proud of. I think that's, I'm looking forward to being able to hand that over to people and let them go change the world, because I really feel like that we've got a chance of doing that with the project. So
incredible. All right. We're going to go to the rapid fire section. We love to do this at MSP Xperience Lounge, have people get to know you a little bit better behind the scenes. Did you had a background with a bunch of guitars in a different space, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I work at home a couple days a week. So last time we talked, I was at home in my music studio. So yes, there's about 25 guitars hanging on that wall. So yes, they're there.
That's awesome. Cool. When you're not designing new games, or you're shredding, so I love it.
Well, I did. I posted, just ironically, last Sunday, I posted a little LinkedIn video.
Yeah, I saw
playing
that.
Guitar,
Yeah.
Just goofing really cool. Off.
All right. In that vein, one of my favorite questions asked: what's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, I don't know. Probably Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yeah, This House Is a Rockin'. I love that song.
Love that.
The lyrics are easy enough for me to sing, and it doesn't require a good voice, but I can also play. So, that's
good. I at my wedding, I couldn't play it. My wife played an instrument during the ceremony. I can't, so I played Guitar Hero, and Pride and Joy was the song I played on Guitar Hero and sang to, and so we got that connection. All right.
Little did we know we were kindred spirits, right?
We're just gonna keep hot sauces, Steve Ray.
Oh yeah, man!
Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
What's your favorite snack?
Boudin. I'll tell you that right now. That's a Southern Louisiana Lafayette Cajun thing, but it's a seasoned rice sauce, pork sausage thing. We serve it as a snack down there. We cut it up into small chunks, and
that's
people
awesome.
Snack on it. So it's a local thing. Cracklins, which are
Oh, yeah.
You know, which are from Cracklins and then Boudin, both sort of ubiquitous down here.
Love it. All
Yeah.
right. Dogs or cats? I heard a mention of a dog. Are you a dog
Yeah.
person? All
Yes.
right.
We actually have a new one. She was a stray, wandered up in the yard, and so
Oh,
we now have a 3 week old. Well, she's 12 weeks old, but we have a new
oh,
dog. So
and she's designing games now, incident response games. So
yeah,
she's part of the
she
team.
guards the door while we're working. So yeah, that's her
There you
part.
go. She's part of the team.
Yeah.
Are you a night owl or early bird for you?
Man, I think there are people on this that'll listen to this that know that I'm both, dude. I'm usually up. I'm usually up early. I perform better early, but I'm usually,
Nice.
with having two jobs, or I mean more or less two jobs.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
really have the luxury of being night or day. I got to cook on both ends of the spectrum. So I'm going to say I can do both.
Just
Yeah.
keep going. Amazing. Awesome. All right, Bob. I think we want to give you a shout out that will be at Ride of Boom. In what capacity? Can you remind me?
No, I'm just going to be attending. I don't have a session or
Great.
anything going on. Although,
Great.
I may try to break into a pre-day or something. I'm pretty good about breaking into stuff. So
Sounds like it. Yeah.
yeah.
And it sounds like they like having you. You got a lot. You got a lot of great expertise and value to add. So why not?
Yeah. I'll empty the garbage cans, whatever it takes to get in. And,
just clean up afterwards.
Yeah, I'm there, man.
Awesome. That's great. Great. Well, I hope to see you there. I missed you at Connect. I'll have to be a little bit more intentional to just have the face-to-face. And then, of course, we'll probably see you on the road and other things. And would love to see a road show, live version of IRGame at some point as well. That'd be incredible. Yeah. Good deal. All right. On our side, we've got a Recover demo coming up. Oh, shoot. Why did I forget which? Tomorrow is our X360 Recover demo. I think December 5th is an X360 Cloud demo that we're running. The events page on Axion.com has all kinds of things like lunch and learns regionally, our webinar series, partner roundtable, cloud, recover demos, all kinds of things going on. And one of those that has just passed in October 3rd was the MSP Xperience Summit. And Bob, you won the award for that. You won a great partner award. Really proud of that for you and all the great work you've been doing in the community. So congrats on that again.
Yeah. Well, and I'm very honored to receive it. And, it was MSP Game Changer, which ironically felt perfect.
I mean, I'd say we named it after you exactly, but what could be more perfect? You're literally changing the game.
Yeah, that's right.
Game.ai. Right. Awesome, Bob. Right. Thanks so much again for your time. Really appreciate having you on. We can't wait to do something like this again. And everyone, please get involved. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
It's been
Thanks,
great.
Bob. Yeah. Thanks so much. All right. Take care, everybody. See you next time.
All right.